Hey, this is Tyler Jones, and you're listening to the Element Podcast. What's happening, my woods people? We're sitting here in Sulphur Springs, Texas again. Casey's got the pink chair sitting right underneath him. And
per request.
I set him up on it for sure. But what's happening, man?
Oh, I'm a little bit froggy in my voice. Me and my wife took a bunch of our youth group kids up to Beaver's Bend this weekend in Oklahoma, and
Trout capital, Oklahoma.
that's it, man. I don't know if I saw one trout. I saw two guys had some on a stringer.
Oh.
Yep. So had a good time. Did some kayaking. Did a lot of singing, praising the Lord, and late at night, and that's what happens to your voice, as you well know, Mr. Singer of a lead singer of a band. Like you sing late at night, and your voice goes bye bye.
Two things that don't mix are singing late at night, and then staying up later at night.
That's right.
And then getting up and doing it again the next day.
Yeah, and then getting up early because I was also a breakfast cook, which meant get up at 5 and start breakfast. So
yeah,
sleep deprivation is alive and well in the Smith household.
And I'm telling you, the sleep deprivation hurts your voice as much as anything.
Oh yeah,
that would affect me a lot back then. So yeah, so something cool happened on the way back.
Yeah.
You were telling me about the other day.
Yeah, man. So a young man decided he wanted to give his life to Christ.
Yeah.
So that was pretty awesome deal for us. You know, there's no bigger decision you'll ever make in your life than that. So he made that decision that weekend. We came home and baptized him, and we're going to have a new brother in heaven.
You baptized him, right?
First time I've ever baptized somebody.
That's pretty neat, man.
It's pretty cool. You know, it's not about personal accolades at that point, but,
yeah,
you know, at a personal level, like it's a pretty cool deal to experience. You know, I can remember being baptized, but like being the baptizer is kind of a neat thing.
Yeah.
So it was cool, man. It was also nice to, I mean, the work we did, you know it's not in vain, and you know it isn't anyways. But like it's cool to see that, you know, God's working in you and doing great things for you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. That's it's a cool experience. Like you said,
Yeah.
it wasn't about accolades, but the experience is pretty neat, man. I mean, and I was just kind of bummed that it didn't happen in the river.
I know.
Like,
It's like, man, we're right there at the Lower Mountain Fork. You can't it's not like
Ice
the
cold.
next best of the River Jordan right there, man.
Yeah.
No, he'd been in there in the kayak, so he probably knew how cold that was and didn't want to do that again.
Exactly. He's like, hey, never mind. I'll tell you in a minute.
Yeah, but no, good times for us, man. Exciting stuff for, you know, us on the home front. Exciting stuff with the Element.
Yeah.
We got cool things going on.
We do, man.
Yeah.
We're going to be traveling in this month, the end of this month, which I don't even know. Like, is there any reason for us not to say what we're doing?
No, let's throw it out there.
Okay, so we're going to the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership, which is a mouthful. The TRCP.
Yeah.
We did a podcast with Whit. It was like the second podcast or something.
Yeah, Whit Fossberg, the president and CEO of the TRCP.
Yeah. So and we've just been in touch. They've been really helpful, just and some, you know, helping us get some of these really good guests and stuff like that. You know, when we talk about conservation and just matters of, you know, their partners. So anyway, we got invited to go up to their media summit, and we're going to do some podcasting up there, some hanging out, some looking at the Mississippi River where it originates. You know,
maybe
like,
catching a few small pike and walleye while we're there.
Frying them up in the hotel. So we're excited about that, man. We get to go up there and hang out with I'm excited to hang out with really interesting people.
Mm-hmm.
You are just hoping that you can like run your hand through his hair, right?
Yes. Yeah, I have a feeling that, you know, I'm adopted and Shane Mahoney was my real dad, but I don't know if I'll ever be able to prove that.
Yeah.
No, but it's going to be cool that there's going to be, you know, a lot of like-minded people here, and it's not going to be about, man, who killed the biggest buck last year. And there's nothing wrong with that. I like shooting big deer. You know, that's what we talk about all the time. But like, it's going to be great to be in a place with a bunch of like-minded people who care about animals and care about wild places.
Yeah. And not just that they're like-minded, but they're like elevated above.
Yeah, I get to learn.
Like these are people that have been, you know, we'll probably be pretty young there for the average person there. And obviously when you start dealing with that, you start learning, you get to learn a lot from
Yeah.
those people that are, much smarter than we are and can formulate a sentence and should be podcasting instead of us.
Yes,
Like-
exactly. And, we're going to get to do some cool stuff, too. We're going to tour the Federal Ammunition Plant and talk to those guys some.
Yep.
And then we're going to
Filson flagship store. We get to go there and
Yeah.
check that out. We get to see the lock and dam number 1 on the Mississippi River. There's just really cool stuff we're going to be able to do while we're up there. And now, it just seems like we're bragging, but man, I'm excited. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome, dude. I can't wait. That's going to be at the end of this month, and I'm sure that y'all be getting a few podcasts off of that trip.
Yeah. And a lot of live videos and pictures on social media.
So
and
follow
stuff.
along on our social media. Check that out.
Yeah, and we've got a giveaway going on right now.
Yeah.
That's another thing the Elements got going on. What's the deal with that?
So the cap that I plan on wearing to Colorado this year, my Sitka Subalpine cap, we bought another one of those that we're going to give away to a lucky listener. So if you're listening right now, press pause, search the Element Podcast on your phone, and leave us a great review, possibly even 5 stars. Most likely even 5 stars.
Yeah.
If you want the cap, it better be 5 stars.
Exactly. You might not make it in the hat when we draw if it's not 5 stars.
Yeah. So go leave us a review on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. Just say, if you feel like saying something nice, say something nice. If not, be like, yeah, Public Lands rock or something.
Yeah.
We've already gotten quite a few good reviews, and we really appreciate that, guys. And we'll be giving that away at the end of August. We should have a podcast launching August 31st where we'll announce the winner of that.
So we'll announce that. So try to get them in as soon as possible, and we're going to try to keep our eye on those reviews until the day that we release the podcast. So
And do not despair if you've already left us a review before this time frame, because I'm sure you know someone else who is an Apple user who isn't a listener of ours. They should be. So talk them into it. And also, if they're not, go on their phone and you can do it off of their phone.
yeah.
Technology's great.
Yeah, it sure is. It sure is, man. So speaking of Sitka, we're interviewing a guy today that wears Sitka. And this is kind of a man crush of yours, I think, isn't it?
Dude, yes, we're going to interview Corey Jacobsen, 9-time world champion elk caller, just all around nice person in general, like a person you aspire to be. Cool dude, you know, nice guy, kills a lot of elk.
Yep.
And doesn't always kill giants, but has killed a lot of giants. And it's because for him, it's not all about the score. It's not all about the size of the antlers. It's about the experience.
Oh, you can tell, man. Like I've been, watching a lot of his videos gearing up for elk season here, and a lot of them have, probably a bull that would go 300, maybe not even, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, you kind of like, it almost throws me off because you're used to seeing these hunting celebrities shooting giants, and he's not. And you can tell that it's because he enjoys the calling and he enjoys getting close and the whole experience as much as he does putting a big set of antlers on the wall and showing his buddies.
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple when you think about it. When you're watching those YouTube videos, does the hair stand up on your neck when like some dude shoots a 400-inch bull at like 200 yards with a rifle? when it was walking through alfalfa pasture, maybe not. But when a 280 comes in screaming his head off at 8 yards and Corey shoots him in the throat, like it's pretty big deal. It's pretty exciting.
It is cool, man, for sure.
Yeah.
I guess we'll go ahead and just break into this thing. What do you think?
Sounds great.
All right, let's get him on the phone. So on the phone now, we have Corey Jacobsen. He's the 9-time world champion elk caller and the man behind Elk 101. What's happening, Corey?
Not too much. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good,
Doing
man.
well.
It's been pretty good weather down here in Texas, considering that it's August. So we'll take it.
Yeah, we've enjoyed cooler weather the last week up here in Idaho as well. So it's definitely on the downhill slide to hunting season, I think.
Yeah, we're getting close, man. We are jacked up. We had a meeting last night with the whole crew that's going into the mountains in Colorado this September. We had a meeting last night to make sure we had all the right gear put together, and we're starting to get really excited, man, for sure.
Excellent. Are you guys going to chase elk?
We are. We're going just to the OTC units there, or a unit. That's a OTC unit there in southwestern Colorado. So last year,
Very
KC
cool.
actually shot a 6x6 there, and so we're going to go try our luck again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be fun. What part of September are you going?
It'll be, I think we're leaving the 12th and coming back the 22nd, I believe. So
Perfect.
yeah, we've got 10 days, and there'll be a day or two of travel in there. on each end, probably. So
Yep.
it'll be nice for sure. So for the listener, explain what Elk 101 is and what you do.
Yeah. So, Elk 101 happened by accident, and it's grown to what it is. But Cabela's approached me several years ago and asked me to come and do an elk calling class. And they wanted it a little bit bigger than a normal 45-minute or hour seminar. And the conversation turned to compensation, and they said, you're welcome to charge whatever you want, but you can't take any money in the store. So their suggestion was either set up a table outside, and when people came for the class, they could pay there, or set up just a one-page website that had a PayPal Pay Here button on it and sign people up that way. So it was a class on elk calling and elk hunting. So being really creative like I am, I thought, well, we'll call it elk101.com. And so set up the one-page website and put a PayPal button on it and set up a PayPal account. And I think we charged $15 or $20 for the class, and sent out an email to my list of 60 or 70 friends that I thought might attend. And we ended up selling out the class. And while we were waiting for the class, people would post a comment, hey, what time does it start? I need to bring bugles. And I thought, well, I'll post a couple pictures here. And, it just kind of escalated into people looking for information on elk hunting. And most of them were, people who were going to the class. But as I started putting more information on there and turned it kind of into a blog of elk hunting information, more and more people started finding it. And I can still remember when we hit 1,000 page views on the website, and I thought, wow, this is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And last year, elk101.com had right at 8 million page views.
Wow.
And so it's just snowballed. But the whole premise behind it is all anything elk hunting related, but the focus is helping other hunters be successful. So, education, sharing experiences, articles, videos, the launch of the online course last year. We've got an online course that basically walks people through elk hunting from start to finish, kind of caps off what the website's all about.
Cool. Yeah, we're pretty familiar to doing a lot of internet research, being from Texas and not growing up in the mountains. We need that kind of help here where we're at for sure. So we're always creeping on guys like you and trying to figure out what you're doing,
Definitely. And we have an advantage that sometimes, I think we take for granted living here. My daughter and I were out last night picking huckleberries just 15 minutes from the house and heard an elk bugle. It's the first elk of the year that I've heard bugle. And they're just right here. And so we take for granted sometimes how lucky we are and how blessed we are to live right here. And for somebody who lives in Texas or east of the Mississippi where there's no or very few elk, it's an intimidating thing to try to tackle and to go through the research, like you say, and go on a over-the-counter hunt in Colorado or something. It's intimidating to even know where to start.
Yeah. One of the best things for me that I've seen that's helped me is I spent some time with I guess my wife's uncle, and he had been to the mountains several times, Alaska. He goes to big sheep hunts and brown bear and stuff like that. And just I got to go on a trip with him doing stone sheep up in northern BC, and just being on that trip, I was able to go, hey, what do I need? What do I need to take? And he knows, and he can tell me. And then when we get there, you learn from the outfitter and you learn from the guys you're with. And I mean, that's one of the best. I pretty much got, a head start by learning that way as opposed to going out and doing it myself for the first, time or two.
Definitely. Yeah. Being able to tap into somebody else's experience, even if they've only been once, there's a lot you learn the first time that is very helpful. So yeah, being able to tag along with somebody or even just tap into that information is a huge help for sure.
I guess that's why Elk 101 is there for people who have, need that experience that you have for sure. But, for me, I spent a lot of time learning the duck call in high school or junior high and high school. And I kind of aspired to competition call a little bit and practiced for a while at that, and quickly realized that real ducks were not making the same noises as the champion callers were, the 42 note high ball or whatever was just not something a mallard hen usually does. So, but the practice that I got, that was huge for me in becoming a good caller. Has that experience been kind of similar for you? How well does competitive calling translate in the elk woods?
And that's a great point. The competitions are judged by humans. And similar to camouflage, camouflage sells based on what humans like, the human appeal to what's sitting there on the shelf. It's like, oh, that's a good looking camouflage. They buy it, whether it actually works or appeals to the animal's eyes or not. And I think calling's somewhat similar, that you have to kind of try to figure out what the human judges are looking for and what they think is realistic and authentic. But for me, honestly, I use the exact same calls on the stage that I use in the woods. I keep it simple. My routine on the stage is very simple. I don't do a whole lot of, the auxiliary or accessory sounds that elk make, because elk make all sorts of sounds. And I just keep, focused on a couple of the main sounds and try to make them as quality as I can. And for a long time, people would say, yeah, those guys are, they're good contest callers, but what they do on the stage doesn't work in the woods. And there's definitely some callers who have created a routine that is more based around a competition call sequence than actual hunting sequence. But for me, I would step off the stage into the elk woods and use the exact same calls that I just used, and the same sounds and everything, and be very confident in it.
So what made you want to jump into the competition calling world in the first place?
I was forced into it.
It might have to do with who your dad is.
Yeah. No, I was entering calling competitions. I don't know, when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, somewhere in there, before I could even use a diaphragm call, entering competitions just with my voice. And of course, my dad was entering competitions with his voice. This was back, late 70s, early 80s, when very, very few people were calling at all. And, he had entered with his voice, and I tagged along, and then his diaphragms became available, and we transitioned into that. We got into calling, and, I was born into a hunting family, so it, I would say came by it pretty naturally. And it was just one more opportunity to rub shoulders with like-minded people and go and get some more practice and become a better caller.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, me and Tyler were actually just discussing this earlier today, how cool it is to be able to get around like-minded people like we were yesterday when we were doing our elk planning trip. It's just nice to be there and hang out with people who have a common goal, and you kind of crave it, So I can definitely see why you would want to expand your horizon into that. So from the first championship to the most recent championship that you have, how did your calling change for the real world? Did you learn anything that kind of changed your methodology?
I wouldn't say that it did necessarily. For the contest, it's always been about, for me, just clear and consistent and just good, authentic sound. And that's always been kind of my goal for hunting as well. I think, for me, there's a big difference between calling on a stage and calling to an elk. And you can sound really good and, be a world champion caliber caller and not even call in elk. It's not necessarily about being a great caller to call in elk. I think it's more about knowing what to say and when to say it, and maybe even more importantly, how to say it. And I would say that that's come just through experience with calling elk, definitely more so than competing in elk calling competitions.
Yeah, and I love that line that you said you can remember your dad telling you, what are you trying to say to the elk? I believe that's what the linguist led with, correct? And
yeah, and that was kind of the whole premise of that section of it. Was my calling style really developed after an experience I had in college. And, I was trying to call to this bull, and he was up on a ridge across the clear cut from us. And I was giving him everything I had, and just these beautiful, they'd win any competition anywhere. And the bull wasn't even interested in him. And I had it all on video. And so my dad was an outfitter, and he got home from his season hunting at the end of the season. And I said, man, I had this beautiful 6-point bull, and I was calling to him, and he just wasn't interested. And you got to see the video. And so I showed him the video, and after a couple calling sequences there in the video, he turned to me and said, what are you even trying to tell the elk? And it really, sunk in that you've got to communicate to them. You have to be able to express whatever you want them to understand through your calling. And it really, more so than just having a language, where there's certain things to say. What I think I've found is that elk communicate more through emotion. They understand the feeling of what you're saying more so than the words of what you're saying. And so just putting that emotion to be able to convey that message is really important. It's something that, that one experience with my dad, I definitely didn't learn it all then, but I started paying a lot more attention to what the elk were saying and what I was saying back to them.
Right. That's cool. I'm a big film guy. So speaking of the linguists, I watched it twice in the last week. The first time was with some friends and their wives, and then the second time so that I could actually pay attention. It's really beautifully shot. Can you kind of tell us how the idea came to fruition and further the film, maybe?
Yeah. So, I've got a really good relationship with Sitka Gear, and I've been with them since they started in, I think it was 2006, 2007, somewhere in there. And David Brinker approached me last summer, I guess spring, and just said, hey, we've got an idea for a film, and we want to do this, and we want you to be involved. And it was basically, his idea was, we want to capture the history of elk calling and kind of show some of the passion that's behind that. And so obviously I was very interested, and it was something that definitely wanted to be a part of. And his initial conversation to me was, we want to send a camera guy with you for a week on an elk hunt and just capture, some interaction. And so I asked him, what was the purpose of that? Is it just interaction? Did they want to kill on film? What was really the goal? And he said, if we can get an elk being shot on film, that's great, but it's not the point of the film. The point of the film is that interaction and elk calling. And so we went into it with that. And as we started kind of delving into it, it kind of took its own legs and started creating its own life. Kind of this whole project just exploded. And pretty soon, I was scheduled on 4 trips to go and visit with Will Primos and Wayne Carlton and Larry D. Jones, and then my dad, and get their stories of, their involvement in the history of elk calls and elk calling. And the poor camera guy had to follow me around like the end of July, scouting and all of that, then through the entire month of September into October, back later in October. And so, we actually went to California and filmed some stuff, just voiceover stuff, earlier this spring. So the poor camera guys, they had a full year of having to hang out with me. And this project we ended up with a little over 18 terabytes of content.
Whoa. Wow.
And condensed that down to 29 minutes for this film. Mm-hmm. So there's so much gold from, all of that content. We spent 3 days with Will Primos, and just that conversation with him alone could be several feature films.
Right. Yeah.
And that's how it started. When it ended up, I think that from my perspective, they told the story about as accurately and poetically and just cinematically as it could be told. And I think the general gist from everyone that's watched it is, I wish it was 2 hours longer.
Yes.
Yeah. I can agree. Yeah. That's it was a really, really good watch. And yeah, it could have been longer. At first, the first thing that kind of runs through my mind is with the generation, the young generation at least, they can't hardly pay attention for 3 minutes. And I'm thinking, man, they're putting out a 29-minute film here, and, is this going to capture people's attention? And it absolutely did. It was very well done. So kudos to you guys, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, just the storyline and everything fell together. It took some work, to be able to. The first cut we had was about 2 hours and 15 minutes long, and it was basically all of the good clips just kind of stacked together. Right. And it didn't, flow in any kind of a storyline. So getting that storyline kind of massaged out. And then once we got the storyline, we had all the content to support it. and it fell into place really, really nicely.
I bet there are several clips that there are several people that are like, man, I wish that could just be in there, but we have to cut this thing down.
Yeah, I know Ben Potter from Kana Outdoors. He was the producer and kind of the talent and the brains behind it all. There was one scene when we were hunting last year. We'd shot an elk, and the next night went back knowing that there were a lot of grizzlies in the area, and there were 5 grizzlies on the carcass.
Oh man!
And so we sat there at 400 yards with a great big 600 millimeter lens, shooting through a red camera, and filmed these grizzly bears fighting and running off coyotes, and I mean just National Geographic type footage.
Man.
And the first cut had probably 2 minutes of that scene in it, and it kept getting whittled down. Ben, I mean, that was one of his favorite scenes, and so he's trying to keep it in there, and pretty soon it's whittled down to 30 seconds, and then just a 10-second clip, and pretty soon it's just one scene of the grizzly bears. And David Brinker finally said, Ben, this is a film about elk calling. The grizzly bears don't belong in it, so take it out.
Oh.
You could feel the pouting going on, but it was there's a lot of killer content that didn't even make it.
I know the struggle. I have so many cool clips, like stacked on hard drives, and I'm just like, I don't know really what I would do with that would pertain to anything that I'm putting out, that I'm releasing. So it's unfortunate, but it's I guess that's the case. When you're out there in the wild, cool things are going to happen, and if you got cameras going, you're going to catch some odd things.
Yep.
So speaking of those camera guys, were they like running around clumsily spooking everything behind you? Did you have any struggles with that?
Ben did a quick little behind the scenes reel of the making of the film, and I think one of them was me making a comment about the darn camera guys and about them, but they showed up. So Ben came out, and we met on that first hunt, and he had never been elk hunting before, had never heard an elk bugle, had never been elk hunting. And the really cool thing was he basically said, I don't know what I'm doing, so tell me what to do. Whatever you tell me to do, I will do it. And, to his credit, he did. And it's always harder when you have an extra person, just another hunter makes it difficult. You have somebody packing 60 pounds of camera gear that's never elk hunted before and, lives literally at sea level, and we're hunting at 10,000 feet. It was tough on him, but he stuck with me. I forget how many miles we calculated, how many miles we did together in that 30-day stretch. And it was a lot more than either of us care to remember. But no, he did great, and it was a ton of fun getting to know him and getting to spend that time and to see him become passionate and excited about elk hunting.
Tyler and I can both sympathize with the sea level to mountains. We're not going to hunt at 10 this year, but in 2016 I laid my head to sleep at night at 3 feet of elevation. And last year, base camp 9,200, so had to really hit the cardio hard before we hit it up there. But it made the trip fun. It's cool to. That's you talked about how y'all have an advantage or a blessing, I guess, of living there, and I definitely agree. But there's something to be said to going to a wild, crazy new place, and that's part of why I keep going back and seeing these things that you just don't get to see in your daily lives. That's kind of what makes the mountains special for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, and my wife, she gives me a hard time. She's super, super supportive, but she always says, why do you have to go to Wyoming to hunt elk? We have elk right here. Or, why are you going to Arizona to hunt elk? We have elk in our backyard. And for me, it's the same. It's just that new adventure of going someplace new and experiencing something that I haven't experienced before.
Yeah.
And when it's tied to hunting elk, that makes it even better.
So when did you know that this project was something special and wasn't just, another filmed hunt?
I think from the beginning we knew, that Sitka's been really good about that, kind of taking hunting films to the next level and going away from the glorified kill shots to, yes, the kill is part of the hunt for sure, and there's no shying away from that, but telling more of a story, making it more of a about the adventure. And so from the beginning, I think we knew that, you know, the kill wasn't the focus. This wasn't just a hunting film. It was a blend of documentary, of being able to share the passion of why we do it, and then also, you know, mix some exciting hunting scenes in there as well. Mm-hmm. But it really, you know, going into it, the goal was, if we can get one elk on film being shot, that's great. You know, that's all we really need for the film. And in 30 days, we got 7 elk on film being shot.
Wow.
Cool.
And we're hunting, I mean, over the counter, general tags. We're not, you know, this was real hunting. And to be able to be blessed with that kind of success for this project, to be able to, because there's a lot of pressure. You know, I go out and I commit to this, and it's, you know, this camera crew out of California coming out. They've never elk hunted before. They're expecting all of this great footage, and we're hunting in an area that literally we've never hunted before. We scouted it for one afternoon and didn't see a single track or any elk sign. And so all of that kind of worry and anxiousness, you know, then with this project on top of it, there was some pressure there. And it's, you know, it's hunting. I try to always keep that perspective that, hey, this is what I do for fun and for vacation, but it's also what I do for a livelihood. And so there was some added pressure that definitely when everything fell into place like it did, we knew that we had more than enough content to be able to do the project justice and still have 3 projects worth of content left over.
Yeah, for sure. So when do we get to see that extended cut? I guess is really what I want to know.
I know.
I want to see the stuff that didn't make it.
Yeah, and that's what everybody's been asking for. And, you know, it's up to Sitka. I think we will see some of the interview pieces with, you know, what I call the legends of elk calling, Larry Jones and Wayne Carlton, Will Primos. We've got a lot of just really cool. I went into each of their homes and just sat down with them in their home and talked about elk hunting and about their path that led them to where they are today. And there's just some great nuggets of wisdom, both from elk hunting, from business, from life, all of that. And so hopefully we're able to share some of those conversations.
Yeah, those would
some
be
kind of an
invaluable to hear from, you know, guys that are legends like that. So what did you get at that diner with Will? I'm sure that Southern comfort food would have been on the menu.
No, so that was actually a cafe, a little diner that Will went to when he was in high school. So that's where they all hung out back in high school. And, you know, he thought it'd be fun to go there and sit and chat. And so we did. And I think we just ordered, I don't remember, eggs and bacon and orange juice or something simple and light for breakfast. But
yeah, something light.
Yeah, something light for breakfast. We didn't get into the whole Southern comfort food there, but you know, an interesting thing about Will, he goes to bed at like 7:30 p.m. every night.
Wow. And
so we went out to dinner one night, and the poor guy was falling asleep in the truck on the way home at like 8 o'clock.
Oh my goodness.
Just very, very disciplined man. Yeah. Just goes to bed early, gets up at, I think, 3:30 every morning, and
wow,
awesome to hang out with him for a few days.
Sounds like the key to success right there. And Will Primos, you can see, you know, where hard work pays off.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm sure there were a ton of special moments, and you know, I know that the moment that you share with Isaac in the film has just got to be one of your more monumental times that you've had in your lives. Is that kind of where the apex of the whole filming happened for you?
It is, you know, and for me, I think I've matured as a hunter and maybe even as a person over the last few years, and having children, I think, does that to you. You know, I'd say the first 15 years of adulthood or so, we're still focused more on me. Even though I had children, they were younger, and I was still, you know, able to go hunting just by myself and focus on my goals in hunting. And then as the children, you know, my children got older and were able to go with me, and you know, I've had them involved since they could walk, but actually having a tag and watching and hoping for them to be successful, it changed a little bit. I think I became more interested, or at least gained more interest and dedication to seeing others be successful. You know, my children obviously at the top of that list, but it transitioned into others as well, which is really, you know, I think part of what Elk 101 does, sharing experiences with others in the hopes that they can be more successful. But yeah, for Isaac, for elk hunting, Isaac was 13. He's been tagging along with me, and he's just a hardcore hunting fool since he was little. And he's really been spoiled when it comes to elk hunting. And he went out. Idaho changed the regulations a few years back, and it used to be you had to be 12 years old to hunt big game, and they changed it to 10. And he was 11 at the time and wasn't quite able to pull enough weight on the bow to be able to archery hunt. So I said, no worries, I'll get in one more season, just focusing on me, and then we'll go rifle hunting later. And I'm not a rifle hunter. I mean, hunting elk, it's if they don't call, if they don't bugle, I don't know how to hunt elk. And I can find them in the rut, I can call them in, but man, you get after the rut, I don't know how to find them, I don't know how to do anything. And so I told him, we'll go rifle hunting, and let's kind of learn together here. And we went out and we hunted the first morning, opening morning, and saw some elk, but didn't get in on them. We had to be back for a family commitment that afternoon. And so we went up 2 days later, and probably 45 minutes after daylight, he shoots a bull elk. So he's got a total of, 3 hours of elk hunting experience, carrying a weapon and a tag, and he shoots this bull with a rifle. And the elk hasn't even finished sliding down the hill yet after he shoots it. And he turns to me and says, Dad, that was really fun, but I want to shoot one with a bow. And I'm thinking, just walk up to the darn thing and look at it first, enjoy this. You're 11. I didn't shoot my first elk till I was 19 or 20. And so, he had that. And so the next year he's thinking, all right, I'm going to archery hunt and we're going to go out and I've got 2 days to hunt. So we're going to kill an elk with a bow. And I tried warning him, man, this is hard. 2 days is not enough time for a 12-year-old to go out and shoot an elk with a bow. Well, as luck would have it, he was at full draw 6 times in a 24-hour period on 6-point bulls.
Wow. Golly.
And, he's disappointed that it didn't happen, that he didn't get one, and he didn't end up getting to shoot. He's at full draw, and for whatever reason, different things, he wasn't able to get a shot. So he said, okay, we're going rifle hunting. So we went out rifle hunting, and we hunted less than a day, and he shoots a great big 6-point back in the backcountry, and he earned it. To his credit, yes, it was his second time ever elk hunting, and he shoots another 6-point bull, but he earned it. We hiked in hard, and he put in the effort there. So he's got a total of 3 days of elk hunting, and he's killed 2 elk with rifle. So this last season, he said, I'm not even going to rifle hunt. It's a bow or nothing. And, I want to shoot with a bow. And again, he had 2 days to hunt. I got back from New Mexico hunting with Randy Newberg and picked him up from his football game. And the film guys were there, and they said, we just want to get some interaction with you and your son, just walking down the trail with your arm around him and just kind of teaching him how to call elk in and all of that. And if we can call in an elk, that would be really cool. And, obviously he probably won't ever shoot one because he's only 13 and we only have 2 days here. And so, yeah, I don't want to spoil the whole film, but the first evening out, he shoots a really awesome 6-point bull with his bow. And it's, it was the capstone on the whole film to be able to go back and start at the beginning and look at how the legends of elk calling had influenced me and some of the lessons that I learned from them, and then to be able to pass that on to the next generation and be able to be there and experience that with my 13-year-old son was probably one of the greatest hunting moments, and it'd be pretty hard to top it.
Yeah, for sure. That's, I guess, the family tradition thing plays itself out in quite a few different areas of the country and different types of hunting and whatnot. And that's how it is with elk hunting in my family. Of course, we're not from the mountains, but my granddad started going to western Colorado in the 76, I believe. And since he's never got to harvest a bull, which is kind of a bummer, but he instilled the love for it in my dad and then in turn myself. And then this past year when I killed my bull, I think the happiest person was my granddad. I mean, currently I don't have room for the antlers in my house, which is being addressed very soon. But my granddad hung the. I did a Euro mount. He hung the Euro mount in his bedroom so he could see it every morning when he wakes up, and it's just it almost like chokes me up a little bit. You know, it's just a cool thing for me to, and it's cool to hear how elk hunting, the mountains, and hunting in general just brings families closer and brings families together.
It is, and you know, and Will and I were talking when I was down there. We wish we could convey that to people. It's not just about the kill. Yes, that's a part of it, and we're doing it with the intent of taking the life of an animal, and we're doing it to fill our freezer and feed our family. But that's not the drive. That's not what gives us the passion for it and lights the fire for it. It's those experiences that we're able to share with others. And when you see someone, you know, like your child or a hunting partner, somebody that you're mentoring, grasp something and gain a passion for it like you have, and then be successful in that passion, it's there's just a special bond there that doesn't come in many other ways.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And that's why that linguist film was not only good but important, I believe, because take my wife for instance. She watched it with me, and she's she hasn't hunted much in her lifetime. She just grew up as a girl and likes to go with me, but doesn't do it a whole lot. And, you know, we're watching, and she's like, you know, this is neat. Are they actually talking to them, or, you know, what's going on? So I'm explaining to her, you know, how we go to the mountains and call and stuff. And then she was, you know, enjoying the film. And then we get to the part with you and your son, and then she connects, and she's tuned in, and she gets it. And that's why that is just so beautifully done. You know, It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun, and I think it did touch a lot of people that were able to share it with their children. You know, maybe their children hadn't been excited about hunting, and they watched that, and they felt the passion. They wanted to go, or like you said, somebody sharing it with a wife who didn't understand, why do you go hunting every year? You can just go out there and camp with your buddies, and I don't get it. And then they watch that and like, oh, okay, I can see how that would be fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. So the linguist means the talkers, pretty much, and that kind of the loose translation.
Yeah, I mean, a linguist is somebody who I don't know if you'd say masters a language, but somebody who communicates effectively in a language. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So let's talking to the elk for a little bit. There's a lot of different styles of calling out there, and I don't want you to show your hand too much or anything, but you have a specific style that's fairly aggressive. Can you kind of go into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so it goes back to that comment my dad made, and I've been hunting elk now for over 30 years, and I've just observed a lot of different styles of hunting and different styles of calling. And a lot of people, will say cow calls are all that work. If you bugle, you're going to scare the bulls away. Or if you bugle loud and aggressive and sound like a big bull, you're going to scare the little bulls. And there's a whole lot of philosophies on it, but I've had so many experiences with calling elk that, little bulls come running in with their eyes rolled back wanting to fight, a little spike or a little 4-point or something that comes in tearing up a tree and bucking and kicking. And I thought, I was bugling pretty aggressively and he still came in, so that can't be the case. And I think ultimately my philosophy on calling elk is elk communicate through vocalization. And during the rut, they become a lot more vocal, both the cows and the bulls. And when a bull comes into calling, he's either coming in because he thinks there's a cow there that's ready to be bred or that he can add to his harem to breed when the time's right, or he's coming in because there's another bull there that he wants to fight to either establish dominance or to take the cows from him. And when you boil it down to that simplicity, those are the only two reasons elk are going to come into calls. They might come in out of curiosity, but they're curious to see if there's a fight going on or to see if there's a cow there. But they're reacting to two emotions, either the emotion to breed or the emotion to fight. And so my calling is very simple, but it's based around that simple fact. I'm trying to trip that emotional trigger in the bull to either make him think there's a cow there that's ready to be bred, or there's a bull there that's challenging him and makes him want to fight. And the latter is definitely my preferred method. I love engaging in a challenge with the bull and just watching him come completely uncorked, and just, there is absolutely an emotional trigger that trips in them, and they're out of control. They come in without thinking, their guards down, they aren't paying any attention to their senses. They're ripping trees out of the ground on the way in there. And when you can hear trees crashing on the way down the hill when they're coming towards you, there's a level of excitement that I haven't found in any other hunting experience.
Okay, so speaking of the elk coming in, charging in, can you talk to us about executing the frontal shot? Because when you're calling, especially alone, I can see that being a very prevalent opportunity.
Definitely, yeah. When you're calling alone, or even, if you aren't, that bull's coming usually in a line from where he's at to the caller. And as a shooter, or if you're hunting by yourself, you're on that line. And so a lot of times the elk is coming in straight on at you. And, a lot of people are negative towards the frontal shot. And I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong. I think from an ethics standpoint, it's up to each hunter to decide. And I think if a hunter is knowledgeable about the anatomy of an elk and where to place the shot, and we're speaking specifically to archery here, with rifle, I think there's a little more leeway there.
Oh, yeah.
But it's, in my opinion, it's the most ethical shot if you know the anatomy and are comfortable making that shot. And I've heard the argument, that you have to hit a ping pong ball at 20 yards to be able to effectively get into the opening on a frontal shot. And so part of the University of Elk Hunting online course is a full chapter devoted to the anatomy of elk. And I actually dissected an elk and took measurements on an actual elk and presented all of that and showed where that thoracic opening is, how big it actually is. And that opening on the front of an elk is about 8 by 10 inches.
Wow.
So we're talking, pie plate size diameter. So inside 20 yards, if someone isn't comfortable hitting a pie plate, I don't think they should be shooting broadside at an animal, let alone frontal. I think there's more opportunity for error on a frontal shot than maybe on a broadside. But on the frontal shot, if you shoot and you get inside that thoracic opening, every major blood supply from the brain to the heart and back and forth through the jugular and the carotid artery run through there. All of the major blood supply is right there. And in addition to that, you have the heart, the lungs exposed. I shot a bull in Wyoming a couple of years ago, frontal, and the arrow went through. It cut off the top of the heart. It hit one lung. It hit the backside of the liver and stuck in the femoral artery in the back hip of the elk after going through the jugular. And the elk was down on the ground, not moving in 10 seconds.
That's amazing. Is that on film?
It is, yeah. It's just on YouTube on the Elk 101 channel. It's the film's titled Wyoming.
Yeah, I was thinking I'd seen that one before. I can remember the elk comes in straight pretty much at you, and then it kind of runs down the lane and piles up all in the same frame pretty much. It's pretty amazing. You pretty much hit everything there is to hit in the elk.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. You have, if you get in that opening, there is no way the elk's going to live, and it's going to be a quick and humane death.
Mm-hmm.
If you miss that opening, you aren't doing, there's no vitals. So you're either the arrow's going along the rib cage, between the rib cage and the shoulder blade, and the elk's got a flesh wound and it's going to be fine, or it sticks in the elk, the point of the shoulder there in the bone or something, gets no penetration, and again, the elk's going to be fine. On a broadside shot, if you hit left or right, you're hitting in the guts or you're hitting in the neck, both of which can be fatal shots, but can take 3 or 4 days for the elk to die. So there's a couple different ways to look at it. I'm certainly not trying to convince anybody to go out and take a frontal shot, but I think with educating yourself on the anatomy and where the vitals are, and then being confident in your equipment, knowing where your limitations are, I wouldn't shoot over probably 20 or 25 yards on a frontal shot.
Mm-hmm.
But I also don't stretch them out there on broadside shots either. So I think just knowing where your limitations are and sticking to that. And if you're confident in your shot, then take it. And it's really not up to anybody else to determine ethics on it.
Yep. And if you're doing your job on the calling, you don't have to worry about taking those long pokes.
Yeah, if you call them into 20 yards, then you're good anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So Let's talk about the calling sequence a little bit. And let me tell you what I used last year and was successful, and you can tell me if it was a fluke or if it's a real deal. Is that okay?
Okay.
I'll preface this a little bit. Tyler and I are both whitetail guys who hunt elk and love it. You know what I mean? Like, that's what we have in our backyard. We get to hunt whitetails a lot, and we use some tactics that cross those borders a little bit. And one thing that I've thought of that I don't hear a lot or see a lot on TV or wherever the media might be, in the whitetail world, you have this thing in the rut where bucks fight, and then subordinate bucks will come in and steal or breed a doe while that's going on. Last year, my dad and I actually did a calling sequence similar to that with elk, where it was a herd dynamic with a herd bull and a satellite, me being a herd bull, him being a satellite, and, cow sounds thrown in and everything. And we had 3 bulls working off of that scenario. And I know that's not something that I've ever heard you say much about. Do you think that was a fluke and they just thought, hey, there's something going on, let's go examine it? Or do you think there's some science to it?
Oh, there's definitely science to it. And we actually call that the triangle. And
Okay.
we've done it several times where we split up. So me and my hunting partner will get, if we have a bull that's stubborn, that just won't talk much, or he's just not moving, we'll split up 100 or 200 yards apart and basically form a triangle with that bull. So the bull's at the head of the triangle, we're at the bottom of each of the legs, and we'll start calling to each other and really, escalating that aggression as we work up the leg of the triangle. So we're getting closer to the bull, but we're getting closer to each other. So he doesn't really, the bull doesn't really know we're coming to him. We're communicating with each other. And every time, if he starts bugling or something, we just ignore him. And several times, it's enough that you get that little bit of a melee going on, and the bull will just finally say that's enough and come charging right in.
That's cool.
Or at least come in to check it out, like you said, with whitetail, where they come in to try to steal a cow or something. But we use it quite a bit when we get a stubborn bull, or especially a bull that won't talk much. We know he's bedded up there, where he's kind of standing his ground and only answering back every 10 or 15 minutes. We'll just split up, and basically all we're trying to do is just increase that intensity and get him to a point where he feels that intensity and wants to join in.
Mm-hmm. So do you normally treat your intensity like a boiling pot of water? Like you let it kind of slowly rise, or do you bring it up right away?
No, we kind of do it a little slowly. So we'll start off, we'll bugle, and it'll be quiet for 2 or 3 minutes. And the other person will bugle back, and, then we'll kind of cow call a little bit to each other, and then bugle again, and just, a little bit quicker response, and then maybe get a little more aggressive and start raking a tree. And all the while, we're moving slowly towards that other bull. And if you can get within 100 yards of a bull and be escalating that intensity like that, it's very rare that they're not going to come in and want to check out what's going on.
So for us, if we're hunting in the Southwest, which the closest 2 states to us are New Mexico and Colorado, so we spend time there when we get to elk hunt. If this scenario plays out that it's hot and the elk aren't talking or responding, and the terrain doesn't really lend itself to much glassing, just what's the best tip? What do you do to get something to happen?
It's tough. And I got a little bit of humble pie handed to me last year in New Mexico. And it was exactly like you said, 85, 86 degrees. We had a full moon. Calling elk was tough. And I'm a diehard elk caller. And so I don't sit water. I just don't have patience to do it. I can't just sit knowing that the rut's going on. Spot and stock just isn't my forte. And so, I always say I'm kind of like the 3-point basketball team that has an off night. When you're a 3-point basketball team and your shooters aren't hitting, you get beat pretty bad.
Yeah.
And kind of the same for calling elk. When the elk aren't calling and you're an elk caller, it's you get handed a pretty good defeat. But water always is a great option when it's hot. Elk have to come into water, and in those Southwest states, water's usually pretty limited, and so you can a lot of times narrow down where water's at and focus in on where the elk are going and pattern them that way. We ended up spotting and stalking elk last year. We went to a part of the unit where we were able to glass a little more effectively. and followed some elk in the morning until they bedded down, and then put a stalk on them. That's how I ended up shooting my elk in New Mexico last year. Was 100% spot and stalk, no calls, and it definitely wasn't as fun as calling in an elk. But after 8 days of hunting and 87 miles on foot down there, the 4 hours that I laid in the sun baking from 12:30 until 4:30 in the afternoon, I was pretty excited to finally shoot an elk. So, but it's tough, as far as calling, there's not really much you can do. If the elk aren't calling, it's just, you've got to go and find one that is. So I cover a lot of country just looking for an elk that will call and is ready to call. And in New Mexico, we just didn't find many. I think we called in 3 elk in 8 days and had opportunities on those elk, but it wasn't like a normal elk hunt where you have a handful of good opportunities and it finally all comes together.
Mm-hmm. So after 87 miles, how many belt busters and Jalitos from Dairy Queen did you have?
Funny story about that, but Randy likes Dairy Queen and I like Dairy Queen. And, the two of us together, we're out in the middle of New Mexico, and I don't know if he has an app on his phone or what, but he knew exactly how far it was to the 2 nearest Dairy Queens. And it was like, 118 miles and 136 miles or something. So going to Dairy Queen wasn't happening. And I convinced him that Sonic was just as good as Dairy Queen. We just needed to go to Sonic's. There was a Sonic 60 miles away. So I forget why we were in town, if we took meat in or what the deal was. But we ended up in town, and we stopped at Sonic. And we all came to the very real conclusion that Sonic is not as good as Dairy Queen.
I think we both agree.
Special about Dairy Queen.
Yeah,
there is.
We both live in a small town where those are pretty much the 2 options that you have to eat in town, and DQ usually ends up at the top of the menu.
Yeah,
that's kind of our Sunday evening meeting place. After church, we all go up to DQ and grab a sundae or something like that. It's kind of nice. Yep. So, aside from a Dairy Queen locator beacon, can you put as out-of-state hunters, we have a big long list of a lot of things that we want to get accomplished before September gets here, and that goes from obtaining knowledge to getting the right gear and stuff. So in your opinion, for an out-of-state guy like us here in Texas, maybe it's your first trip coming up, what do you think should be some of the more important things for a guy like us to focus on if it's our first trip out west to hunt elk?
I think that the more confidence you have in every area, the better you're going to be. So well-rounded is good. I always say that, the best archer in the world isn't going to kill an elk if he can't hike up the mountain, if he's not in good enough shape to get up the mountain to where the elk are. Mm-hmm. And on the flip side, the best caller in the world might call in the elk, but if he hasn't practiced with his bow all year, he's going to miss them. He's not going to kill one. Or the guy that can run marathons can run to the top of the mountain, but if he can't call or can't shoot his bow, it's not going to matter. So I think it's important to, instead of trying to be an expert in one area, to just make sure you're confident in all of those areas. And coming from out of state like that, there's the guys who have never hunted before. And for them, the things that they need to focus on are probably different than somebody who's been there before. Your first time there, it's just literally a matter of, where do I go? Mm-hmm. Once you've been there, you kind of have an idea of where to go. You've been there, you've scouted a little bit during your previous trip. You have an idea. So that's not as much of an important factor, but just planning the hunt the first time, understanding how to get the tags and where you can go hunt, and then just having a basic idea on elk knowledge and maybe calling. But then after that first trip, we all know that there's not just one trip elk hunting. It's once you go, it's in your blood and it will not leave. There's no cure for it, but to just keep going back. And, after that, I think it transitions a little bit into maybe more detailed scouting and a little better understanding of the area and specifics of the area, elk knowledge, what the elk are doing throughout the day. I think the one thing that I would say is probably the most important aspect, regardless of how many times you've been or where you're going, is understanding of thermals and mm-hmm. knowing how important that the wind is and always paying attention to that.
Yeah, for sure. So say I'm a Texas guy and I've been on the fence about going elk hunting this year and I'm not really prepared. Is it worth it to throw a trip together, or would it be better to hold off for a year, prepare yourself, do a lot of learning, and go into September 2018 as prepared as you can?
If it's a matter of choosing between one or the other, I think that you'll have a better experience being more prepared. But at the same time, just going and getting the experience of being there, if you have an option or an opportunity to come back in 2018 also, there's going to be invaluable things that you learn and experience just by being there that will make 2018 even better. But if you have to choose one or the other, I don't want to steer you one way or another, but the more prepared you are, the more confident you are in each of those areas, the higher your chances of success and the more enjoyable that the trip's going to be.
Yeah. So how can Elk 101 and University of Elk Hunting bridge that gap?
That sounds like you were leading into a sales pitch there.
I'm trying to help you,
Honestly, the University of Elk Hunting is designed to fill every void in an elk hunter's arsenal, whether they've hunted for 10 years or never hunted before. It's almost like a dynamic resource that you go through it the first time and the things that you really need stand out. But then you go through it a year later and new things stand out, things that you experience like, that's what that was. I'm going to study that and learn that. There's too much information really to absorb it for a new hunter. There's no way you could absorb it and, come out of it with a graduate degree without going elk hunting. But I think it will steer you and provide you with everything you need to be able to plan a hunt and execute a hunt and go into that hunt confident that you know what you're doing and you truly believe that you can go out and do it and be successful. And then once you do it and you experience some of those things, there are going to be other parts of the online course that stand out that you're able to add to your next trip. But it's so comprehensive. It's 120,000 words of written text and over 70 components of video and hundreds of images and diagrams. So it's not like this little thing you're going to read in an hour and be like, okay, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
It's 46 or 47 chapters broken down from start to finish. So it starts with planning a hunt, how to obtain tags, how to choose an area. I don't go and provide the information. Here's where you go hunting, but I provide you with all the resources so that you can do the homework, I guess, and pick those areas and be confident in it. And I really think that teaching somebody kind of the why behind, elk hunting is way more important than teaching them the how. If you tell them how, in this situation, this is what you do. When that situation happens, they know exactly what to do. But if they know why to do it in any situation, they can apply it and make it work. So the course is more about just going deep into each of those areas and making sure people understand the why, and then through that, they're able to determine the how.
So I'm going to do a little selfish thing right now. I've accrued, I'm starting to accrue a pretty significant number of points in Arizona, and I'm hoping to draw in the next, probably 5 years or so. What I need, like one or two big tips on using my points and hunting in general there.
Yeah. So I've hunted Arizona twice, and I've been there, I think, 2 other times during season. You looking to archery hunt?
Yes, sir. And
are you looking to kill a 400-inch bull?
It's pretty, I'm always doing that. No, I pretty much, this is a state that I wanted to kind of build up whatever it took points wise to kind of have a trip of a lifetime, hopefully.
Yeah. So I'll share with you the first time I went to Arizona. I was a younger, less mature hunter, and I'd set a goal to shoot a 350-inch bull. And that's all. I studied every picture, judging bulls, trying to understand, I didn't want to shoot a 349-inch bull. It had to be 350.
Yeah.
And I went there and had a great time. There were 3 of us through the tags. We shot 2 bulls the first 2 days, and I had my tag for the next 10 days by myself. Like I could be as picky as I wanted. I could wait 10 days. We were into a ton of elk. And that next night out, the 3rd day, we called a bull in, and I'm looking at this bull coming across the meadow to the calls, and I instantly think that's a 350 bull. He's in my book a shooter. And he came in, stopped broadside. I shot. He ran off. And when we walked up on him, my heart sank. His first and second points were 7 inches long, and all I saw were his huge fourths and fifths and main beams.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up scoring, just over 300. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I'd completely wasted the hunt, wasted the tag. I'd never have that opportunity again. And it ruined the hunt, just having those expectations. Mm-hmm. And fortunately, I drew a different unit in Arizona 3 years later and went back with a completely different mindset. No, scores didn't matter. I was just going, and if I saw a bull that I liked, I was going to shoot him. And I didn't care if he was a 5-point, if he scored 240 or 340, it didn't matter. And I was willing to not shoot an elk on that hunt too, just because, that was my mentality. And the difference in experiences between those two hunts was night and day. So much more enjoyable. Everything about it was great. Now, I ended up shooting a much bigger bull on that trip. So that's, it's kind of easy to say, well, yeah, of course it was a better trip. But throughout the adventure, the whole story and journey we had was just off the charts better. Yeah. And so expectations are so important to establish. And I'm not saying that, saying I want to go there and shoot a 400-inch bull there's nothing wrong with that. But for someone who doesn't get to hunt elk every year, making sure that expectations are realistic is so important. Yeah. And also understanding, when I went to Arizona the first time, I thought there's going to be 400-inch bulls behind every tree because that's all you see on the covers of magazines are these bulls from Arizona. Mm-hmm. And even in the best units there, sometimes finding a 320-inch bull is difficult. Mm-hmm. But somebody told me once before I went there, leave your elk calls at home. You can't call in elk in Arizona. And after hunting there 3 times now, I will tell you that if you can't call in an elk in Arizona, you will not call an elk in any other state. And it's dependent on year and all that. But man, I have never seen such vocal and non-call shy elk anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. That's cool, man. That's exciting. I'm pretty good about managing expectations. I've been hunting Kansas with my dad for whitetails for 12, 13 years. And I kind of, because I'm the young guy and it's a lot of his friends and him, I kind of take the low man on the totem pole thing. And I've managed to shoot some just real heavy, just 6 or 7 point bucks, but they're just old deer. And I'm kind of used to that. Man, if it looks good to me and it gets my heart racing, it doesn't have to score, it doesn't have to be a 200-inch whitetail or even a 130 if it's a big, gnarly sucker, and I think I can manage that as far as Arizona goes for sure.
Totally.
I probably have a lot more research and hopefully a lot more experience before I draw that tag. So I'm excited though. That's good news.
Do you have a specific unit you're looking at?
Oh, I don't. Right now I've just been putting in for top unit first choice so that I don't draw because I'm trying to build points, and build some experience with KC out in Colorado and elsewhere.
Definitely.
So that's kind of the idea.
How many points do you have?
I have with my loyalty point, I have 6 this year, and I'm planning on trying to get out there and take the Hunter's Ed point, and so hopefully. I'll get into that double-digit area pretty soon, and I don't really know what that means. I haven't done enough research to know exactly what it's going to take to draw some of the top units out there, but I've heard a lot of guys that I've talked to that have hunted Arizona are like, I'll never spend more than 8 points out there again. So, I mean,
and honestly, so I have done a bunch of research and looked at the numbers, and we drew Unit 1, which is a great unit. We drew that archery tag in 2005 and drew it with 4 points. And it was a fluke year. It was the year that the U.S. Outfitters sued the state of Arizona for non-resident discrimination. And after the draw had been conducted, the state was required to go back and issue non-resident tags equivalent to the number of resident tags they had already issued.
Wow.
So I mean, I forget how many thousands of non-resident tags they had to issue, but they did, and we got some of those lucky second issue tags.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, well, it's going to be 10 years before I ever draw again. And in 2008, with 3 points, Cabela's tag services didn't get the applications turned in by the deadline.
Oh, no
And so
way.
there were tens of thousands of elk hunters that used that application service that didn't get submitted into the draw.
Oh my gosh.
And because of another mistake, I slipped in with 3 points and drew another decent tag.
Oh, wow.
And I'm sitting on 10 points now. And we were planning on drawing this year, but the state of Arizona changed the process for drawing tags last year. And it's good for people with less points because it reserves some of the tags for the general bonus pool. But for those with max points or the highest points in the unit, it kind of killed us because it added a couple more years on to being able to draw that. So we're sitting on 10, and a tag that we used to be able to draw with 6 or 7 points now is taking 12 or 13 to draw.
Yeah. Well,
So.
I hope, I don't know, I'm not a pro elk hunter, so anything with 5 or 6 points looks like a giant to me. So
Exactly.
I'm excited. That's for sure.
Yeah, no. And so I think your plan of getting some experience in Colorado and stuff is just spot on. I've done seminars in Arizona and talked to people like, I've got 19 points, but I'm, only time I'm ever going elk hunting is on this hunt, and I'm hoping to draw it next year. And I just think, what a waste of waiting 20 years to go on your first elk hunt.
Yeah.
You go to this incredible unit with so much potential with no experience. Go and hunt Colorado over the counter, or Montana or Idaho, or some of the states that offer over-the-counter tags, and just get a couple years of experience under your belt. So when you do draw that once-in-a-lifetime tag, you're prepared for it and better prepared to use it.
Mm-hmm. Corey, I don't really have any points because for forever. Okay, Tyler's talked me into it now. This year I'm going to be, buying the Wyoming point and, trying to accrue a few along the way. But I just can't imagine going to a unit where I'd have to pass up a bull. That just doesn't sound like my kind of thing. I don't know if I could go somewhere and not shoot the first thing that came in, because it's just, I love it. I just get fired up, and you know how it is. I mean, you're the guy who does this. Like, you get in there and you yourself are fighting the elk. It's not like you're making an elk sound. Like, you become an elk, and that emotion just wells up inside you, and it just would be anticlimactic to not make it happen.
Yep. Yeah, to have to let an elk walk away after it bugles in your face, it's hard to do.
Yeah, it's like
I heard somebody
come up
say
and
one time,
slapped your girlfriend. You're supposed to say bye. Yeah,
exactly.
It doesn't work.
I heard somebody say one time, I've got a trophy hunter eye, but a meat hunter trigger finger. And so that's kind of, for me, sums it up, because I don't pass up very many elk. When they come in, that the challenge for me is just calling them in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, for me, that's the thrill. That's the trophy. And the trophy isn't the size of the antlers. Although I do like big elk. If there's a big one standing next to a little one, I would choose the big one every time.
Yeah.
But
Amen.
If there's a little one standing in front of me, I don't usually let the little one run away, hoping that a big one comes in.
That's right. This past year, I was drawn on a rag and then heard my bull bugle from behind and just happened to turn to see him. Otherwise, I was going home with a 4-point all day. It was going to happen.
And been totally happy with it.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
grinning from ear to ear and eating elk all year long. That's what I love to do. So this year, Tyler and I are getting to go to Colorado together. He's wanting to accrue a little knowledge, which I don't know where he's going to get that, because it's not from me. But I guess it'll just be from
Experience.
the mountains. And I know that you're a guy who values that camaraderie and friendship. You've got the hunting buddies you have, Dirk and Donnie, and so can you tell us a little bit about the importance of what it's like to have those guys on the mountain with you that you can bounce ideas off of, and that you're all on the same page and have a common goal?
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I spent the first several years hunting by myself. And I think there's a level of success that comes with a hunting partner if it's the right hunting partner. It doesn't mean that he has to be a great hunter, but you have to have, the same vision, same goals and everything, and then be willing to work together towards it. But just that the teamwork mentality of, it doesn't matter who shoots an elk, this is a team, and when we shoot an elk, that's that's a success for the team. And when you get to that level or that understanding, the enjoyment is just so much more. I've hunted with people where it's a competition. Like it's, you start calling and pretty soon they're slipping ahead trying to get set up on the elk. So you move ahead and pretty soon you're busting the elk out there because you're both trying to get the first shot. Mm-hmm. Or a hunting partner that doesn't ever want to call. It just, I left my calls, you're going to have to call today. And, it's just, it's not fun. You're just, there's no part about that that's fun. But when you get guys or hunting partners that you enjoy spending time with, we have as much fun back at camp as we do elk hunt. We have as much fun on the road trip getting there as we do. We just, we're just best friends, and being able to spend that time together doing something that we all love to do is great. But then, as I mentioned before, just the bonds that you're able to share when you have those experiences, where you're staying up till midnight in the tent talking about what happened over and over, reliving it over and over, and just sharing that together, contributing to each other's success. I think that's probably the most rewarding part for me, is to know that I was able to have a hand in seeing somebody else be successful, and not having to get attention or credit for any of that, but seeing them get, credit for the success, and knowing that it was a team success is, so rewarding. And then, when you get an elk on the ground, it doesn't hurt to have a couple of strong extra backs there with you.
That's right.
So it's just win-win all the way around.
This year we definitely planned on who we invited to go with us according to their physical abilities. Oh yeah, you look pretty stout. You want to go?
Yeah. And see, it's kind of a catch-22 hunting where we hunt where there's grizzly bears, because you don't want two guys that are faster than you. Right. You got to make sure that you can outrun your hunting partners, but at the same time, you want to make sure they're strong enough to pack elk. So you've got to be really selective there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. In Colorado where we hunt, we have those black bears that are glorified coons, so we don't really worry about it too much. I tell Tyler jokingly that I feel like I could probably wrestle one of those black bears down, and he tells me I'm a cocky jerk and to shut up most of the time. So I don't know.
So now you're just going to have to do it to prove it.
I know. Yep. See, he's going to push my buttons. Just
I'll film it.
Like a bugle and challenge an elk, just tell me I can't do things. Oh, man. So between the three of y'all, who's the best shot?
We've all had our share of misses, and we've all had our share of hits. So it's
that's a good answer.
We aren't keeping track.
Yeah, well, you're a nice guy, Corey. I missed my first elk at 11 yards. So if you can imagine.
How do you miss an elk at 11 yards?
Oh, Corey.
Recurve.
No, I say that completely jokingly because it happens, and they're like, I've had people say, I don't understand. Somebody's telling me they missed an elk at 7 yards. You can put all 7 of your pins in the vitals at 7 yards. I'm like, man, when an elk's screaming in your face and standing there, you aren't thinking about pins. You aren't thinking about peep sight. You aren't thinking about anchor point.
Yeah.
That's right.
All you're thinking is, oh my goodness, there's a 800-pound animal screaming in my face, and you pull back and shoot out of reaction. And so what pin did you use? I don't remember. What color was it? I don't know. I might not have even looked at my pins.
I think it was brown.
Yeah, that's about how mine was. This is my first ever elk hunt as an adult. I went with my dad, younger. He pulled me out of school, which probably kind of helped me to fall in love with it. But I decided I was going to be, really overconfident and bring my stick bow with me to Colorado. And go on an elk hunt, which was a very poor idea at the time. And Cal called this bull in to 11 yards. He came around a little scrub oak patch, and he looked like Godzilla with his eyes rolled back in his head, and I was nowhere near prepared for that experience or the size of that gargantuan animal. And drew my stick bow with arms of jelly and nicked a rose bush, and I don't even know if the arrow would have made it there anyways, but it happened. But and ever since then, it's I've done my best to not be solo hunting like that and to have a friend there, someone to share that experience with, because at that moment when I missed like that, that's probably as low as I've ever been. You know, I just couldn't believe that I was blessed with such an opportunity on my first trip and I blew it. And I had to sit there for another hour and a half while it got dark to wait on the rest of our hunting party to show up to talk about it. So I sat there and just wallowed in self-pity for forever, you know. And if I'd have had a buddy there, a good buddy, the guy that you want to be on the mountain with, to give you a slap on the back like, hey, man, it happens, it would have made a huge difference in my whole hunt. You know, even though I missed that animal, it would have helped me a ton.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that is a big part of it, because elk hunting's tough, and just the mental side of, you know, things happen. And when they happen, if you've got somebody that's, you know, Debbie Downer all the time, it wears on you, and pretty soon nobody's having fun. But if you have somebody that has been there and understands it and gives a good pep talk every once in a while. And, you know, on the flip side, I think it's good to be light sometimes. You know, a couple of years ago in Wyoming, we threw Dirk under the bus quite a bit. He had a rough year and missed a couple elk.
It happens.
He, you know, the first one happened. It was day 1 or day 2. It was a great big 6x7 bull. And I just, you know, I was able to be light-hearted about it and tease him quite a bit, and, you know, say, hey, if you're going to use those game bags, why don't you give them to me? And, you know, just razz him a little bit. But on the second one, the attitude changed. It was another big 6x7 bull about 100 yards from where he missed the first one. And, you know, I walked up to him, and you don't make a joke at that point. You know that that's crossing the line. And so then it became, you know, more of the pep talk of, hey, you know, things happen. Let's go over the next ridge. There's another bull over there. Let's just go and find it and keep going. You know, if we sit here and throw a pity party, nobody's going to fill a tag. So let's just, you know, go and hope that we get lucky enough to bugle in one more, and let's give it an effort. And so, yeah, just having partners that laugh when it's right to laugh and pick you up when you need picked up, and it just, all of that contributes to the overall experience of the hunt each time out.
Yeah. So 2 giant 6x7s. What unit was that?
just FYI, those were the 2 biggest bulls we called in all season.
Oh, man.
He happened to be the shooter and missed both of them, but things happen, and he redeemed himself last year. And we're back on solid ground going into this season.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's great. I can't wait to see how y'all do this season, and I don't know if you'll be able to top last season cinematically, but I'm sure in experience it'll be great. Corey, thanks for spending so much time with us, man. Yeah. We really appreciate it. I did want to ask you, I know that hunting on public land is something that you do every season, and it's something I do every season, both here in Texas and in Colorado, and hope to aspire to do elsewhere. And the fact that those lands that we use are brought into jeopardy by people who some of us may have actually elected into office just makes my blood boil. So can you give us a little statement on why you think public lands are important to you?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And there is nothing in the world wrong with private lands, and I support private landowner rights and all that. But for most of us, especially here in the West, we're blessed with a lot of public land. And if that gets taken away, we don't have an option to go and enjoy the outdoors. And you see it in a lot of places. Texas is a prime example. There's, I don't remember, is it 97 or 98% privately held lands or something?
Yep.
And so you're stuck leasing private lands or having to have the money to own private lands to be able to hunt on. And for me, that isn't how I grew up in Idaho. I could walk out my back door and had a vast amount of public land right there. And I want to make sure that my children have that opportunity as well. And you see so much, lands get transferred from federal control to state control. And at first glance, first brush, you think, yeah, it's a great idea. States need to be able to manage it. We don't want the federal government telling us how to manage our lands. But most states don't have the budget to manage lands appropriately. And when you get into some of these Western states where the wildfires are a huge problem, state-controlled land, when they have a wildfire, they can't fight it, so they have to rely on funds other places. And when that happens, the first thing to go is state-owned land. They put it on the auction block and they sell it to a private landowner to be able to create the budget they need to pay for managing the land that they just sold. And we're seeing it quite a bit right now that states are selling off some of their managed lands to be able to make up some of that budget shortfall. And those lands that have been public for a long time are ended up in hands of private individuals who are shutting down access. And we're watching access literally get taken away from us in areas that we've been accustomed to going. And so it's just so important to understand public lands, to support private land rights, but also to preserve and protect the public lands that we have, and make sure that the people that we're electing to office understand that yes, we want state control of most things, wildlife control, all of that, but it's not always black and white and an easy decision to say states need to be able to manage the lands. Not saying that the federal government does a great job of managing them, but they at least have the budget to be able to manage them and keep them public.
Yeah. Well, Corey, this has been awesome. Like Casey said, what's the best way to find out what you're doing and to learn from you?
Signing up for our email list, just our newsletter at elk101.com. We send out anything that we have going on that's cool or interesting, elk hunting related. We don't spam or send out junk. It's everything that goes out is elk hunting related. And then just follow us on social media, either Instagram or Facebook. Just look for Elk 101, and YouTube also. We've got a new elk hunting film coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome.
And like to share our experiences with others through video platforms. So any of those platforms, you'll definitely know what's going on with Elk 101.
Awesome, man. Well, we will link to that in the notes, and we appreciate you coming on and spending time with us this evening, man.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, and keep me posted on how Colorado goes, and excited to hear how you guys do.
All right.
Sir, we will.
We'll see you soon, man.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Thank you.
Man, I'm grateful for his time, but I could have asked him questions all day.
Man, I hope I get to share a mountain with Corey Jacobsen one day.
Dude, Arizona might be in the cards, man.
So do a little point sharing. Hey, Corey, we got a couple,
I'm going to be like, dude, come on now. It's going to take you 2 more years to draw that unit, right? So maybe I draw it just happenstance with 9, let's go ahead and just make this a hunting party, Let's do a party app.
It's cool to talk to somebody like Corey, because you can just tell that, he's passionate about similar things that we are. He cares about his family a ton, and he's just an all-around good guy. And I'm not claiming to be a good guy, but I strive to be, And he's a guy that, he's not old, Corey's young, but I still look up to him a lot. And for all the things he's done and from what it seems, I don't know him, on a daily basis, but from what it seems, he just is well liked across the board.
Right. Yeah, definitely has a good name within our community. I think a lot of people respect what he does and who he is as a man too. So that's cool, man. That's a cool thing if you ask me. There's a lot of people that value different things in this world, and I think that's a cool thing for sure. So don't forget, the Sitka Cap giveaway is going on right now through basically the end of the month. We're going to try to release a podcast, I think, August 31st. So if you're listening to this, you have till pretty much late night, August 30th, I think, is going to be about when we get ready to get this one on the internet. Or get that one on the internet. So what you do is you go to iTunes and you give us a 5-star review. Anything less, you might not make the hat, like I said earlier. So 5-star review or whatever, whatever you feel like we're worth.
Yeah, but, don't be spiteful and just say, just because you say I said that.
yeah.
Be nice to us.
So, please. And like Casey said earlier, you can say something if you want about the podcast, and we really appreciate those that do. And we take that information and store it in our brains to use at a later time and go, that's what the people are liking. That's what they want. But if you don't want to do that, you can say something along the lines of Elk Rock, or something like that. Keep it public. Yeah, there you go. And you'll still make it in the hat, pending your 5-star review. So, anyway, be sure to do that. The Sitka Subalpine hat is up for grabs. And, there's several people that are starting to review. But I still think the odds are going to be good for people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the nature of, it's not the easiest thing to just like go to iTunes and give a review, so like you're going to have pretty good odds of getting this hat.
Yeah, exactly. It's way better odds than if like Sitka themselves gave it away on their social media pages. We don't have quite the followers they do. I mean, we were doing pretty good, but
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That ought to be a good deal for you. Hopefully, I can't wait to give it away, really. I mean, I'm excited to just kind of make contact with one of the listeners.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you guys for listening. I hope you enjoyed that podcast. I know it's a little different. It's elk, but man, it was on fire for sure tonight. So hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you around next week. God bless.